folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We're back here for part two of the discussion of the offense from that win over the Cardinals. Every win's a good win. Let's start with that. In the first episode, I talked a little bit about the opportunity set that Lamar Jackson had in this game and how it didn't really work out for him. 1.5 yards per pass attempt with ample time and space is the big number this week. Last week, it was 22.4 yards per play every time he was under pressure. So Lamar, while he had a great game the previous week and with bad offensive line circumstances, had a terrific offensive line performance to work with this week. And unfortunately, it did not work out for him. So, we talked a little bit about multiple causes for that in the first episode, and I hope you'll go back and give that a download. Lots of other stuff on the trade deadline I talked about, some of the trades that were made, some of the reasons maybe why the Ravens didn't make trades, and just try and understand this seemingly ongoing war of words that occurs on Twitter between the people who don't want to trade away the future and love their draft picks, and the people who want to win now, and always want somebody new for this year. It's not a matter of one side's right or the other in every case, but it is a matter of we need to take a little bit of time to understand each other and why we might have these feelings about them. And it may be another Arab-Israeli conflict where we cannot come to an understanding over such things, but it also may be a case where at least, we don't have to be rude to each other or mean to each other or talk trash to each other based on these viewpoints that are, well-founded, I think, in each case in terms of what's going on. And Voss and I could be very civil with each other, though we have very big differences in terms of how we approach win now situations on Friday Morning GM. So I'd like to give you a chance to tune into that show if you would. So I think there's hope for everybody else who has difference of opinion on this to just talk to each other like normal adults at this time of year and not inflate problems beyond what they really are. Anyway, let's get down to it. Talk at the second half of the show. We always start out with the offensive line stuff. I will kind of work my way through this on my own, but the offensive line is responsible for only one of the 4 sacks in this game. They did not allow any quarterback hits, 7 pressures. That was, pretty good, honestly, for 31 plays, and 1 penalty for an illegal downfield player, so a 5-yard penalty, a serious penalty, by the way. I talk about that every once in a while because it gives a defensive option. But on the other hand, 1 5-yard penalty for a game is certainly something you would take. But anyway, the key thing there, are responsible for only one of the 4 sacks. So Ronnie Stanley surrendered a sack. He's the first player we'll talk about, when he slipped on the field and allowed Ojulari to beat him to the inside on a play. But nobody else allowed a sack. All the other sacks were over 3 seconds. Lamar held the ball. Eventually, the pocket broke down and he got tackled. None of that gets charged to an offensive lineman. They all made their blocks on those plays for the time necessary. If you go to a site like PFF, they generally feel the same way about it. In fact, if you look at it, they've got a sack for Stanley and nobody else. So they're very similar in terms of how they record it. On the other hand, for defensive players, even a late pressure or sack is recorded, and it's not within 3 seconds. For me, I no longer record that as a pressure for a defensive player, but if they get a quarterback hit or a sack, you're knocking the quarterback down. So that's obviously a late event that should be recorded and should be valued. In fact, so starting with Stanley, we talked about the problems with footing in the first episode. I don't think it was enough of a point of emphasis for the Ravens to get the right length to their studs in this game. And a number of players were having trouble with footing in the first half. Stanley's last into the second half when he lost his footing on the sack. So, a difficult thing, and you got to get it right. And there's some comfort issues involved that football players don't like to play with, longer studs that are less comfortable. But on the other hand, if you lose your footing, you're not any good to anyone. So, it's something that has to be, I think, appropriately tested. And maybe the Ravens need a quality control element or a set of drills you run a player through to prove that he's got good fitting with his cleats or whatnot to be passable on the turf. Like I said, the Ravens, I think, usually get it right at home. It's on the road they have more problems. Sometimes it's a matter of rain, and that may be unavoidable in some cases. Wasn't a matter of rain indoors in Arizona. It's a matter of it's like a golf green you're trying to run around on, and it just is the footing is a lot more treacherous, and you need a longer stud to work with, and they didn't seem to have it right. So Stanley, if you'll remember, the very first touchdown drive allowed 3 pressures on that very first drive. And the third he actually allowed was on the touchdown pass. And unfortunately, I think that creates a false narrative for this game that Lamar was, oh my God, he was working under such tremendous pressure during the game. And look at this on the touchdown pass. He even managed to get his foot out from under Stanley's and throw off one leg at a weird arm angle to touchdown pass to Andrews. By the way, that was fantastic play by Lamar. No problem at all. And did have a really good game with pressure with over 7 yards per throw in pressure situations. So that part of his game was excellent. But it's also a false narrative because most of the time in this game, 13 out of 31, 42%, had the highest rate of ample time and space that he's had all season. And that's where he only got 1.5 yards per throw. But the offensive line played a really fine game. Stanley, the 3 pressures allowed were only kind of the tip of the problem, though. And he's the one guy who had some issues. He didn't get run out of any pressures this week. By the way, Lamar didn't run anybody out of a pressure the entire day yesterday, Sunday. But he did. Everybody got pressures that they actually allowed, and nobody avoided a pressure that way. Stanley missed 7 blocks. This is one of the positive things about Stanley. Several of those were on L2NBs or a pull or a case where they really didn't have anybody to block on the backside of a run play, and only one was a loss at the line of scrimmage. That's very good. So those losses at the line of scrimmage are what really cause problems, and they're the ones that have a higher probability of becoming pressures the next time around. When you lose at the line of scrimmage, and John Simpson earlier this year was getting pulled to the ground a lot, not necessarily on plays that were pressure. Might have been on run plays that went for a gain anyway. He'd get a 0 on the play, but that kind of loss at the line of scrimmage is a lot more serious than pulling and not being able to find a block, or moving to level 2 and not being able to find a block. And just generally speaking, that's a very good note for Stanley, is that he only had 1 out of 7 that was a loss at the line of scrimmage. He made 3 blocks in level 2, was 3 of 4 on pulls, 1 pancake, 4 highlights. 4 highlights is a lot for one football game. I'd estimate that happens probably 4 times in a season. Maybe once somebody gets 5 during a season for a Ravens lineman. In his case, it was a mix of stuff, really interesting stuff. 2 combination blocks that he made. He had a play where he made 2 blocks on the backside of a run play. This is something you almost only see from Ronnie Stanley. But he jammed, I think it was number 93, into the line of scrimmage. So he was in the wash and would have had to, run around traffic to get back in the play. Realized that situation and jumped out to bump a defensive back off his track, where he might have gotten back into the play later on the other side. So the run was right. On the left side, Stanley's taken 2 guys out of the play. It's something that really needs to be noticed. It's a very positive block when he could do something like that. He's an extremely heady player, and he has very good judgment about knowing when he's taking a player out of the play in order to make that second block. So really appreciate who Stanley is in that case. The other play was fantastic. He was at right tackle outside. Now, unbalanced line was right. So he got moved over to the right tackle spot, which is 3 away from the center. So on the left side, they just have 1 guard, then Linderbaum, then Zeitler. Go 1 to the right. They have Moses in a tucked position. So he's in his standard spot for being right tackle, but Ronnie Stanley's moving outside, which means he's tucked and has responsibilities that are more similar to a guard in that situation. And so Stanley's on the outside, and he's a big decision maker on a right side run, where he may have to decide whether he kicks out, whether he moves up to level 2, but he's probably got the most active decision-making role on a run to that side. And they often do run it to his side on that. They even picked up on that on the broadcast, which I thought was really good. And having Ross Tucker, an offensive lineman, you'd figure them to do that. Ross is great with this kind of stuff. But Ronnie was right tackle outside. It was a 6-yard run by Edwards that occurred on the second play of the drive after the Stone interception set them up with a 23-yard field. So they got a pass for 10. The second play, they line up unbalanced right. Stanley at right tackle, sealed number 95. I think that's Cam Thomas to the inside. Then Moses was able to move up half a level to take over that block and effectively take over the backside of it. And Stanley turned to the outside and kicked out Kaiser White. He effectively cleared out both sides of the hole on the same play. Edwards shot back right off the left side of his butt through that hole for 6 yards, set up a 2nd and 4. The next play went in for a 7-yard touchdown when the line was unbalanced left, and Stanley was back on the left tackle outside position. So again, with Moses tucked this time on the left side. Great pair of plays, but that first play where he cleared both sides of the hole is the kind of block that should be on his lifetime highlight reel. He's got a lot of them. Stanley's been a great offensive lineman, but I hope these players are putting together their best plays on a highlight reel of their own that they can show their grandchildren. So, they don't miss out on that opportunity. I've always thought that would be a fun kind of a thing to put together for a player if they wanted to talk about some great plays that they had, but particularly offensive linemen. You can show them an individual game, and you may have one block in the third quarter. You want to show somebody from that game that's really great, but if you have 20 plays or 30 plays on one reel, and you can get your grandkids to sit down and watch it with you, I think that'd just be a lot more fun. I don't know how many players are actually thinking about this in their 20s, when they're not even parents themselves sometimes, or even or they might not be married, or they might even not know if they're going to get married. They might not even know if they want kids. There's always going to be somebody you want to show this to at a later point in time. So by all means, make sure you get that tape. Even if you don't save that football necessarily from a big event, that tape will mean a lot. So anyway, Ronnie had 3 blocks in level 2. We talked about the 4 highlights already. Now here's the problem: he did allow the sack to Ojulari. He allowed 3 pressures. It was a short game in terms of there being 59 scored snaps because the Ravens had a kneel down as well. That subtracted 1 from the 60 they had. So a D overall. He barely squeaked into the D range with an adjustment that was fairly solid. But I think for the second straight week, I look at it and say this is a game where qualitatively Ronnie Stanley is starting to look like Ronnie Stanley again. Now, if you take out that sack, which occurred, I think, due to cleats, he's back into the middle of the C range. Sure, I hope he would have made more of his opportunities to block. But on the other hand, a lot of those missed blocks also were not losses at the line of scrimmage, as I said. That's also a very nice thing. And then the 3 pressures on that first drive might have also been partially shoe related. Anyway, that was another place where, sure, things could have been better. I'm glad it worked out. They had a touchdown drive despite allowing 3 pressures. Ronnie Stanley allowing 3 pressures. That's terrific. They had a touchdown pass despite Ronnie Stanley's allowing or stepping personally on the quarterback's foot. That's fantastic. But on the other hand, he needs to score well in some of these games, and that's something he has not been doing this year. So hopefully Ronnie will pick it up now. The rest of the offensive line played absolutely fantastic in this game. Everybody was at least an A-. So I'll give you the spoiler alert right there on that. We'll go through them pretty quickly right now. Simpson, and all these guys are quick because there's not a lot of negative plays to talk about. Simpson had his second straight outstanding game. No penalties now for 3 straight games. That's really important for Simpson to reduce his penalties. Obviously, we've talked a lot about how that's been the big bugaboo his entire career. 13 holding penalties in 1,545 career snaps before he came to Baltimore. We thought that was an opportunity for improvement. So far, it had not been through the first 5 games, but in the last 3 games, he's cleared up a lot of that. He had 1 pressure where he actually pancaked Kaiser White in the cone, and that was an unfortunate place. And he was standing in the cone right in front of Lamar as he did it. So it's almost like he provided the pressure on Lamar. Lamar had to move for him to get a throw off. And you just need to be careful about what you do around the cone. It is sometimes something that happens as a guy gives up room, allows somebody to get close to the quarterback, then pancakes someone into the cone. That will often cause a pressure where the quarterback doesn't have the ability to step into his throw. That I consider to be very important. So that's a big part of my scoring system. And in this case, it was himself, a big-bodied 6'4" guy who's in the way of Lamar. He went 6 of 8 on pulls in this game, something Simpson had not been uniformly great at game by game. So it was really nice to see. Very importantly, he was much quicker processing on his help blocks for Stanley. So you want the biggest thing to take away from this game? I think it's probably that. Maybe the penalties as well. But I really love the fact that Simpson, this game, it seemed to be a point of emphasis that he's processing from inside out, looking for hand on the center. Where's the blitz coming from? Where's the stunt coming from? I'm helping Stanley. That's your order of operations there. And you want to make sure you get quickly over to helping Ronnie Stanley on these games. And Ronnie could use the help, and Simpson did a good job of it in this game. He had 3 missed blocks. None of those were losses at the line of scrimmage. So 2 pulls, I mentioned, he went 6 for 8 on pulls, and 1 L2NB where he moved to level 2, couldn't find a block. 3 level 2 blocks, 2 pancakes, 1 highlight in the game, an A for the game, and tied last week for his best as a Raven so far. Really nice to have John Simpson turning it around at this point in the season. Really, really good to see, because the Ravens are going to be dependent on him. And I don't think the Ravens see there as being an answer. But frankly, I was getting worried as recently as 2 weeks ago that if Simpson continued to play at a kind of a subpar level, not getting penalized too often as was happening early in those first 5 games, that he might be replaced or start to get rotational play with Ben Cleveland. And that would have been unfortunate, because Simpson now has started to play well. And I think he's secured his position there at right guard for the bulk of the rest of the season, at least. But, barring obviously an injury, but I think he's in good shape to hold that spot. Tyler Linderbaum had a big holding call yesterday, which reduced his grade significantly. On the previous week, this game, he had his second best game of the year, trailing only the Tennessee game from 2 weeks ago. 1 pressure where he failed to pick up a Kaiser White blitz in the A gap, but otherwise he didn't have any negative events in the game. He had 3 missed blocks. And this is important again, none of those were losses at the line of scrimmage. He missed on a pull. He was in level 2 for 2 other missed blocks. So moved to level 2, couldn't find a block. So that's a really good game for him in those terms. 0 pancakes in the game. Made 3 level 2 blocks, 2 out of 3 pulls, 0 pancakes, 1 highlight combination block. Again, these go pretty quickly when you don't have a lot of negative events to talk about. A- for Linderbaum in the game after adjustment. The center scale is a little bit more difficult. He can thank Matt Burke for making me realize just how much differentiation there ought to be between tackles and centers. I actually had to change that scale down several years over the course of a couple of years to make it more favorable for centers, who now need to get a 92 to get an A-, and that's exactly what Linderbaum got in this game. Kevin Zeitler, his 3rd game in the last 4 where he scored well, and all I can say is phew, because his play is critically important to this offensive line. It appears like he's back on a very good train with 3 A's or A- in the last 4. He had 1 pressure, which is only his negative event. He was bowled by Zaven Collins. Zaven Collins, an interesting draft pick as an outside linebacker a few years ago, a guy who had some coverage skills, and I thought matched up reasonably well with the Ravens, although people generally thought of him as a higher draft pick that I would have been really comfortable with the Ravens taking him. But he played pretty well in this game, I thought, or that anyway, play was good. Zeitler missed 2 blocks. Only 1 of those was a loss at the line of scrimmage. Here's the big negative for Zeitler in this game, which was the only thing which prevented him from getting an A as opposed to an A-. He was penalized for illegally being downfield. That's a really bad penalty because it gives the defense an option. You're much better off false starting, both 5-yard penalties. False start is 5 yards at the only. It makes it 1st and 15. It makes it 2nd and 5, and an extra 5 yards, whatever it is. But it doesn't create an option for the defense to say, you know what, we'll take that interception instead. Or you know what, you got sacked for an 8-yard loss. That's fine. That's fine with us. You don't want to create options for the defense. So it's very important that not occur. And if I were to redo something about my scoring system, it would probably be to change, reduce the penalty per 5 yards to -2, and then increase the penalty for any option granted on a play for an additional -2. So an IDP would change to be a -4 instead of a -3, and a false start would go to -2, and holding would still be actually -6, as that would work out. So in any case, Zeitler, a penalty that did stall a drive in the end, but otherwise played quite well. 6 out of 6 on pulls, 1 block in level 2, 1 pancake, 3 highlight combination blocks. So his mobility and all looked really good in the game. Obviously, you don't want to be caught in level 2, but to have that good set of pulls, get into level 2, make highlight combination blocks, all very positive. A- after adjustment in this game, and Kevin is playing well. We get over to Morgan Moses. He had his best game since week 3. I am not sure why he left the game after 50 snaps. So I didn't hear anything about it mentioned about a Moses injury in a Harbaugh's presser. They did have a lead, but they also drove using the run on that drive for a touchdown that really resealed the game at that point. So it was a little funny to me that he wasn't out there if something wasn't wrong. So he's one of the players we're going to want to look at on the injury report tomorrow, make sure he's a full go. Hopefully there's no problem and he'll be back to play. He certainly is a player you'd love to get some time off for. The same obviously would be true for Ronnie Stanley in terms of making sure he's not out there playing snaps he doesn't need to play. And as it turned out, McCary came in and was terrific for him as well. But let's talk about Moses first. He allowed 1 full pressure, no other negative events, 4 missed blocks. 2 of those were losses at the line of scrimmage. Center, you need a 92 to get an A. At tackle, you only need an 87 to get an A-. So it's a more lenient scale, and it's a function of the fact that tackles are put in situations where they give up more pressures just naturally, and all you have to do is look at the totals for pressures of quarterback hits and sacks, and the further you get away from center, the more of them there are. So it's fairly natural that you would that people would get that. So I don't think I have to harp on it, but certainly something that Moses did extremely well to go a 50 snap game with only 1 pressure is very solid. Mobility blocks continue to be solid for him. He looks good because he doesn't pick up courtesy points on pulls. So when he's a trailer and he would get a freebie just for running his lane, he almost always finds somebody to block. He's a high effort motor guy. You might not think of Moses necessarily as being that, but the guy has really impressed me in that way more than just about any other since he's come to the Ravens. So very positive on Morgan and how he played. A after adjustment for him, and don't think I have anything else to say about that. Patrick McCary came in relief for that last drive. Ravens moved right down the field, and McCary had a number of blocks on that drive that were special. Not only did he go 9 for 9 at right tackle, but he had a pull where he hit. He had 2 level 2 blocks, and he had a highlight combination block. So that was really a terrific run there. And a good job by McCary getting it done in relief of Moses. Certainly something I think he's pretty happy to put on tape. He hasn't played badly by any sense this year, but he's just kind of an adequate minus guy when he's in there at left tackle. Not the guy the Ravens want there for certain. If they honestly felt like he was an adequate player, then they'd already have the casus belli they need to move on from Ronnie Stanley or rotate with Ronnie Stanley or reduce Ronnie Stanley to a pitch count or whatever it might be. But that's not the case. They know that Ronnie has a lot of upside from where he's playing right now. They know that McCary is basically playing about as well as you can expect when he's in there at left tackle. And I think that they'll continue to have McCary be that super sub, that 6th guy who's been very effective for them. Well, that's the offensive line. Anyway, fantastic game and just the opposite of last week. So is Lamar really, who didn't come through on the opportunities presented by an outstanding game of pass blocking. One of the things about doing the show alone is I don't get as often to take a break to take a drink of water. But if you hear me taking a break here, I'm not going to try and edit this. You guys can just understand what's going on. And if it's a long break, I'm probably running to the bathroom. So you know that. Some other skill position players I'd like to discuss. We'll talk a little bit about Flowers, used more in a short wide receiver screen game. In this case, I don't think the Ravens are getting what they need to get out of Flowers, obviously doing that. But Flowers did have some other contributions to this game. He had a fantastic block on one of Edwards' touchdown runs, really maintained it well. And you look at this much smaller man blocking a larger cornerback and treating him like his stepsister or whatever it might be, really blocking and maintaining that block. And, he appropriately, I think, put a finger in the air at the end of that. And, that's one for me kind of thing, or, just great, we got the lead. However you want to think about that play, Flowers, a terrific contribution on it. The streak of 50-yard games ended at 7. And that tied the record, of course, since the merger, I believe it is, in terms of receiver in his first 7 games getting 50 yards in every game. Jamar Chase, who was the other one who had 7 games, had 4 consecutive games under 50 yards, starting with that. I think Flowers had 19 or something in this game, but they did not use him much down the field, or they did not get him free much down the field, let's put it that way. And he would have been one of the weapons that once they figured out what the spy game was, that might have been a change they could make, would be to take advantage of that space between level 2 and 3, get Lamar some opportunities to manipulate those spies by either stepping out of the pocket or stepping up in the pocket, and get those spies triggered, right, moving downhill, and then create that space between level 2 and 3. Easier said than done in some cases, but once you're at the point where you're extending a play, a lot of guys are going to look back to move back towards the middle of the field, or at least you have a lot of lottery tickets for that to happen, given you've got a lot of receivers. If you move right and leave the pocket on the roll, you actually restrict the amount of field. Even Lamar Jackson will not throw all the way to the left sideline in that situation. And so I think you reduce your own chances to get a completion. If you stay in the pocket, step up, or just leave the pocket, taking a step out and then maybe even a step back in, you leave yourself a better chance to make a throw over the middle of the field and try and trigger those spies. Let's talk a little bit about Odell Beckham. Now, Odell Beckham had 4 targets and no catches, and that doesn't include the times he was targeted on penalties. 3 defensive fouls additionally drawn in this game. For all of the weaknesses in what Odell's done, and he's had a career low again in terms of yards per target at 6.2. He's done very well in terms of those penalties, and those 7 penalties are not insignificant. Obviously, the DPI in the end zone was the big play on the last touchdown drive, which was positive. And I think there was one on an early drive. Yeah, the DPI on the left sideline on number 20, drawn by Beckham, helped give them a first down at the 8-yard line that they then punched in on the very first drive of the game. So his penalties, they had a significant impact on the game. And you've got to give Beckham credit for that. You got to consider it in terms of how much additional value is being added on those. But I think we have the right also to be a little bit disappointed in the results of Beckham, the receiver. I cannot construct a value argument for the amount of money that Beckham was given, and I also can't construct positive portent that would lead me to think that Beckham can suddenly turn his season around and put up 700 yards, say, of offense, or probably even 500 yards based on where he is now. I think it's more likely he ends up between 300 and 450 now, maybe would be my guess. And I think, honestly, I had an initial estimate was in the 300 range, and then I upped that after I saw what the contract numbers were, because between the combination of incentives and the fact that the Ravens had spent so much for him, it was obvious he was going to be a bigger part of the offense than had he been a vet min guy with some incentives, where there actually is options for the team to get rid of him. And I've upped that to about 441 yards. I know lots of Ravens fans thought over 1,000 yards that's obvious. Come on. And, that obviously has not worked out. I saw it was offered on DraftKings, I think, or on one of the other sites at 580 for an over-under before the season starts. I have no idea what that over-under is now, by the way, but you can probably still bet it because we as Americans want to bet on everything at this point related to sports. So I'm sure it's out there. Let's move on now, because Odell definitely made contributions despite not having a catch in this game. Rashad Bateman, fantastic game in a number of respects. He's getting very due praise from Harbaugh in terms of what he did to come back for that 29-yard catch. That was the other big play on that opening drive that got him down to range. It looked like the ball was intercepted. Bateman, frankly, just jacked it right out of the hands of the defensive back. And that is one of the great trust plays you can possibly make for Lamar. Lamar probably already thought, oh, crap, interception. And then incredibly, Bateman has the football. Not only just doesn't knock it down, which, hey, you gain a lot of trust points just for doing that, but, actually comes up with the football.
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and a brand new cash-out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First two legs of your parlay hit, cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at an even bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boost, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no-strings-attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. With the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Guys, I've shared moving. I was using this for all my meals. Now I'm working from home. Guess what? Microwaves in the other room. I'm using this for all my meals. Factor is how I get through my lunch day every day. But they've got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I haven't tried the breakfast ones yet, but why not? I think I might add that to my next order. But I love them for lunch. Plus, they've got new autumn fall flavors out right now for limited time, featuring seasonal veggies like cranberry, pecan chicken, and apple Dijon pork chops. And again, just like everything else, they're ready in just 2 minutes. They'll satisfy your fall cravings during this busy season without the hassle. So go ahead and level up with Gourmet Plus options as well, prepared to perfection by chefs and ready to eat in record time. Treat yourself to upscale meals with premium ingredients like broccoli, leeks, truffle butter, and asparagus. Head to factormeals.com/ravens50 and use the code RAVENS50 to get 50% off. That's code RAVENS50 at factormeals.com/ravens50 to get 50% off your Factor meal today.
Another catch he made was a little 5-yard catch that didn't seem like too much because it didn't get a first down on, I think it was a 3rd and 8 that was later in the game, but it made the difference. The ball was a little bit behind him. First of all, it was the first drive of the fourth quarter. Ball was a little bit behind him on 3rd and 8. He caught it, got tackled very quickly, which was unfortunate, but that wasn't on Bateman. That was really more about ball placement and the fact just that the ball was so short of the sticks was likely going to be a downhill play made on Bateman. I don't think he was going to get the first down no matter what. But it cut the field goal distance from 53 to 48 yards. And after Tucker had missed from 53, give him the easier opportunity by all means, and he nailed that, and that was, of course, gave the Ravens, I think, 24 points at that point, at 24 to 9 lead, I think is right, and so a nice lead in the game where they were 24-7. They were feeling very safe about it at that time. Anyway, I do expect Bateman to be more of the offense as we move forward. And I think we saw some of that in the fourth quarter when he got a huge opportunity to run the jet sweep on 2nd and 13. And, while some of me says don't use your best route runner on a jet sweep when you have an option to use other players, and I'm not saying that Flowers is necessarily has to be the guy, but you got Duvernay available. You've got other wide receivers, maybe Aguilar or somebody like that if you want to run a jet sweep. But they gave it to Bateman, and that's a big trust win for him, and he delivered with an 18-yard run. And, for all his great route running, and for the other things that he's not been on the field and we haven't seen him as much. He said, Rashad Bateman is still very fast. So nice to see him outrace the defense on that play, and I thought it was schemed up well, and very good that they gave Bateman the run there. Patrick Ricard had an up and down game. Certainly some good things that happened, also some not so great things. Had a great block on one of the early touchdown runs, or actually I think it was the 7-yard touchdown run left. He made a great block on. Yeah, it was actually, I think it was the last touchdown in the third quarter. But he had a twofer on the play where he took 2 players out of the play, and that's always nice to do. Ricard otherwise was not perfect in terms of his blocking, but he remains an asset that they use. I thought it was a little strange in a game where they ran the ball almost exclusively at the end, and Ricard still had 35 carries. Okay, I was looking at something else. I thought he had 25 carries on, but 35 carries out of 60 is just fine. So Monken is using him almost 60% of the time, and that's a good amount. I've been very happy with the way Monken has continued to emphasize the role of Ricard. He's obviously the Ravens' best point of attack player. When they want to juice up run schemes, and there's still a lot of time in football games, particularly when you are a team that builds leads, where you want to do that. You want to create point of attack offense, and you want to be able to get the run game going and stop the clock out on the other team. Didn't see him as a receiver at all this week. Hill had another good game of touches here. He had not any really big runs, but he ran 4 times for 15, didn't embarrass himself in anyone, did have one, I believe, run for negative yards, but his long was 7 there. That wasn't the big thing. Well, the big thing was a 24-yard pass play. He had 4 out of 4 targets caught this game. And by the way, Justice Hill has now caught all 15 balls thrown his way this year. The problem was that he only had 11 for 27 or 28 yards coming into this game, which was 2.5 yards per target. And now he had an average of 10 yards per target, 4 catches for 40 in this game. So that'll considerably improve his average. In fact, I can calculate that, I guess, on the fly here. He might have 68 over 15. So he's 4.5 yards per target now, which is substantially better than the 2.5 yards he was coming in. And here's the other thing. With Edwards going 2 catches for 14 yards, and he was the only other running back that was targeted in this game, the Ravens maintained a 9.0 yard per target average for their running backs this season. And it's been everybody's contributed to that. Kenyon Drake, the now Browns practice squatter, Josh Gordon, it made a contribution to that. Mitchell made a contribution on just one play that he was there. But anyway, there've been multiple backs that have contributed to it. Most people will correctly point to the Edwards 80-yard catch as having a significant component of that total. It's still fantastic that they're getting running backs involved as often as they are and as successfully as they are in Monken's offense. And that is a tribute, I think, to some of the spacing that the running backs are able to make as much hay as they have. Really, really looking forward to Mitchell getting more involved in the passing game. And I think Monken has the golden ticket with regard to Mitchell already. He played his first 2 snaps in a pony backfield. I think one time he might have been lined up in the backfield. The other time he came for jet motion and took the pass that went left for his only touch to date. Getting him involved in the offense like that as a flanker is going to make Flowers a more effective downfield target where he's less of the designated gadget guy. And Mitchell himself is going to be one hell of a dangerous player from all looks. Also another reason to be kind of happy the Ravens didn't pick up a running back at the deadline. Would Josh Jacobs be good? Yeah, he certainly could be, but whoever he takes playing time away from, it's going to be some of snaps from Edwards, Hill, and Mitchell. And each of those guys, we're fairly confident, I think, in what the Ravens have there. Hill's been a threat when he's touched the ball. I think he promises to be more of a threat in the Monken offense than he was with Roman, obviously, because of the spacing and what they've been trying to do. And Mitchell, I'm still excited to do both what he can do as a ball carrier out of the backfield and in these situations where they want to use him as part of a pony situation. So excited about that, and perfectly happy that the Ravens can get by with the talent they have, including Mitchell when he comes back. Nelson Aguilar, only 1 target in this game. It was incomplete. little bit unfortunate, and I'm trying to remember if from visually, if I can remember that the target that was incomplete for him. But a guy who probably will be schemed back into the offense more. Lamar does seem to have a good degree of trust with him, and he's a guy who has ended up way outplaying where he was in 2022. And just to give you an idea, he was really near the bottom of the league in a lot of the important advanced metrics, including drop rate and yards per target and things like that. This year, Nelson Aguilar, despite going 0 for 1 in this last game, has 10.1 yards per target. That's only happened, I think, 4 times in Ravens history in a single season for anybody with 20-plus targets. It might be 5 now because I think Bateman might have been the 5th. But he's caught 17 out of 22 balls for 222 yards. And Aguilar has been a significant component of the Ravens offense. And hopefully, if he can continue at that same kind of pace, which is probably unsustainable, you'd be very excited by that because receivers that are 9.0 and over are worth their weight in gold, 10.0 and older worth their weight in whatever the next highest medal is. But anyway, that's a good way to look at it. Talk a little bit about Edwards earlier in the first show. I thought Edwards just a fantastic job of running the ball down the opponent's throat when they knew the run was coming. And, the Ravens had good scheme. They got him some decent holes to run through. When he ran through those, he had decent amounts of yards after contact, not great. And by the way, a 2.4 yards per contact game is certainly not great, but it needs context because at the point in the game he was running, it's difficult for him to pick up big yards per play after contact because he's always going to be facing multiple tacklers quickly after that first contact because the box is so stuffed trying to get him stopped. Ricard can only do so much. Unbalanced line, getting Stanley out, making decisions in level 2 only can do so much. So they did good things with him. I thought he was effective, but unfortunately, his yards per carry are going to suffer this year from just the offensive style that the Ravens play and the fact that he's going to be doing most of his running when the other team knows it's coming. Mark Andrews, I think we'll hit on him just briefly. Another fine game. The guy just seems to be in the right place, finding Lamar Jackson at the right time. The touchdown pass was an excellent example of it. Interestingly enough, Flowers was moving to the exact same spot. You could probably see that on the as the ball was thrown. I think that Flowers might have been the guy that Lamar would have immediately thrown to had Andrews not been there. Like maybe if Andrews had stayed into block, say on the play, it wouldn't happen there. I know, but Flowers was doing the right thing to shake free late on that play. And just a great combination to have Andrews know where to go, to be able to sit down for the football, and Lamar know how to get the ball to him, even when his left foot is being stepped on by Ronnie Stanley on the play. So good one by Andrews. Let's talk about the MVPs from the game. Then I'll go out of the mailbag here really briefly. I'm going to go just 3-2-1 pretty quickly. My number 3 guy is Rashad Bateman. Fantastic game of being in the right place at the right time, making a play on the football that you really love to see, making a nice run, doing the nice safe reception on the 3rd and 8 play for 5 yards that shut down or trimmed the field goal distance for Tucker in a way that really helped the team. So Rashad Bateman gets my number 3 nod. I don't think it could be anybody but Gus Edwards at number 2 or number 1 maybe, but I'm putting him at number 2. Edwards, a fantastic game in terms of running at the Cardinals when they knew it was coming and they still couldn't get him stopped. And they drove right up the field for that touchdown when the Ravens really needed touchdown. If you look back at the last few years, the games blown against the Dolphins, against the Giants, and others, the Bills, the Ravens needed a touchdown like that in every one of those games to try and stave off the opponent and both run out some clock and get an additional score themselves. And that's what the offense really lacked. They turned the ball over pretty regularly, particularly against the Giants in that situation. And then they gave up really quick TDs when the ball was returned to the opponent. So Edwards' ability to take the Ravens right down the field, and my number 1 MVP, their contributions to it as well were really special. The Ravens offensive line from left guard to right tackle gets my number one vote. And I'm sorry, Ronley Stanley has to be included, but he just didn't have as good a game as the other guys. Simpson, Linderbaum, Zeitler, Moses all played at extremely high level, all within a very close range in terms of the scoring, all either right at the bottom of the A level or exactly at the A- level for two of them. So fantastic game for those guys. It is so good to see all of them playing well together. And I think if we're taking something out of the positive from the trip to the desert, that would be it, is that the offensive lines seem to get it together at the right time. They pass blocked well against, a not bodacious pass rush, certainly, but they pass blocked well. They gave Lamar a great opportunity set, and they ran the ball when they knew it was coming. I've said it about 5 times, but it's just bears repeating in a certain sense that was very special. All right. Now, I've been a little bit remiss in going through the mailbag, so I'm going to try and get to all the questions I can here over about the next 10 minutes, and we'll go fairly quickly here. Brett Hammonds has been a regular contributor, had a couple of different questions. He says, hey, Ken, do you happen to have YPA or EPA numbers for Zay on screen targets versus other targets? That's a good thing, and I wish I had that, but I don't. It might be that a site like Football Outsiders has that. I'll have to do some digging. I will try and get back to you on this one. But the question he asks also, and this is probably the more pertinent one, is what are the factors you think that are keeping those plays from working? Well, I don't know that they haven't worked. I mean, I don't expect them to be 10-yard per play opportunities for Flowers, as elusive as he had, but he's had a couple of good ones during this time. He's also had a couple that haven't worked. One of the things is that the Ravens have run a lot of these this year, and that means other advanced scouts have seen it on tape. They know when they get certain looks what's likely to happen. A motion by Flowers always has to be taken into account for the possibility of a gadget play first, a jet pitch, jet handoff, or a jet pitch, or also for the possibility that he motions out. And by the way, we see a receiver motioning away from the line of scrimmage directly from the slot on the same side. That often means wide receiver screen. It's kind of a giveaway. And that would be one thing that I would point to. Of course, that can also be a misdirection element. If you use that the next time, and it's not the Arizona Cardinals, maybe it's the Cleveland Browns, and you get 3 of their defenders over there trying to stop that screen pass, well, that might create another opportunity for you, whether it's a Lamar Jackson run or whatever it might be. And that might be something. But anyway, it's true. The Zay targets on the screens haven't been working out. Let's go to another one here. This is a good one from @Nikki622A, Angelove85. And she says, if Bowser, Ham, Ajabo, and Pepe are coming back, is the defense complete, or do we still make a trade? Now, this was sent on the 30th, so the day before the trade deadline. Also, any concerns about our run defense? Okay, so there's two really good questions here. So first of all, is the defense complete? I think the defense is complete in a lot of ways. I think the outside linebacker in position in particular, Bowser and Ajabo, are 2 significant returns that would be players they don't want to block. I think they'd be perfectly happy making Tavius Robinson a inactive based on the amount he's played. That has not been significant enough to have him have a roster spot. So I think they'll be happy to have that happen. Ham is a guy who I think gives them some Sam linebacker characteristics they'd like to have on early downs, maybe instead of a few Harrison snaps. So I think that could be good. Although Harrison's played pretty well, honestly. I'm happy with what he's done. Bowser is the best coverage outside linebacker in the league when he's right. So hopefully when he comes back, he's the same player he used to be. It's interesting. I think a lot of people are already acting as if Bowser is gone. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I think Bowser is probably, when he returns, going to be playing for his 2024 job. He's signed. He's an incredible bargain. If he's the Bowser of old, he's a contract you don't want to have on the books if you have a significant injury risk for next year. So hopefully Bowser comes back. They're not paying him this year because he's on NFI, but his contract doesn't roll over into next year. It will only do that on the last year of his deal. It's called tolling, and I always get confused about which direction it goes, but in this year it happens, his contract doesn't still have 2 years left on it, only has one, even though the Ravens didn't pay him for this year. So I'm happy. I'm perfectly happy they're not taking snaps away from any of Owe, Van Noy, or Jadeveon Clowney, all who have really good pass rush rates. They could have gotten a better pass rusher at a high price. Young was a guy, or Sweat might have been a guy as well, who both have very good pass rush win rates. But those guys also come at a high cost. And then you also have to figure out what's the amount of incremental value you're getting over your current guys. And some of those guys have to lose snaps. So I'm not unhappy at all about it. The one thing that additional outside linebackers like Bowser and Ajabo can do for the Ravens when they get back, and this also would have been true with Young, is they would have given relief to the defensive line in terms of snap count. So we really want Matabike to play a few less snaps. One way to do that is to have, and Pierce also, to have Pierce replaced on passing downs by another player, and have a player like Travis Jones take some of his rundown snaps, and then also to have passing down snaps where they only have one defensive lineman on the field. I know it's probably going to be Matabike, but Jones replaces Matabike on early downs at the 3-tech. Matabike plays all the passing downs only, and you probably have Matabike's snaps cut enough that you can still get the maximum value out of him. And to do that, you need to bring in an extra outside linebacker who can kick inside, and having Bowser and Ajabo active would provide them with that kind of flexibility. Right now, the Ravens have no personnel flexibility they're using at all. And that gets into your second question about, is there any concern about the run defense? I don't have any concern about the run defense at all. I think, they give away some runs that created some second and shorts early in that game. The Cardinals ended up running for only a little over 4 yards per play in the game. I don't think you get 4.0 exactly, as it turns out. I don't think you get concerned at all about a level like that. I think you let it ride, particularly when the team's only allowing 4.3 or 4.4 yards per pass play, which is just unbelievably good. So they're getting the variation they need defensively, I think, versus both the run and pass, with a combination of holding penalties and tackles for loss on run plays, combination of penalties and sacks and turnovers on pass plays. I think this team is getting it done in every way defensively, and it certainly shows up when you compare them to any other defense in the current NFL. Their yards per play allowed, they have a bigger lead on the second place Cleveland Browns than the Browns have on the 18th ranked Seahawks. Think about that for a moment. So the Browns are something like 0.58 behind the Ravens. I think Ravens are at 4.16, Browns are at 4.74, and you tack on another 0.58 to that, and you get to the Seahawks, I think, are at 4.30 or 4.31. But the Browns are closer to them than they are to the Ravens in terms of yards per play. And it's a great Ravens defense, and I think contextually we'll have a chance to look back at this. Wouldn't compare them to the 2000 defense, which made their hay in the playoffs. They had a great regular season, no doubt about it, but they also allowed 3.2 yards per play in the playoffs as they demolished the other four teams they faced, and only Tennessee could really stand on the field against them. So I'm not ready to anoint them in that way, but I will say they've had a full year now with Roquan Smith, and that year had Tyus Bowser back for the second half of last year. In this half, though, they've been rotating in a lot of other pieces. They haven't had their full outside linebacker core. They haven't had their full cornerback allotment at a level that I think they would have been happy with before the season started. They've had injuries at safety that haven't come up, but they have seriously held it together. And part of the fact that the Ravens have allowed a little bit more in run yards per play is a function of the defense they play. They play this cover two, where other teams are incented to run the ball. In fact, if they don't run the ball, they're kind of penalized for trying to pass into it. And they haven't been able to pass successfully long. The Ravens have really reduced long plays. They have given up a few longer run plays, but not too many. And the overall yards per play is excellent, no matter how you slice it. So I'm going to put myself right in the column of not concerned about the Ravens' run defense at this point. But thanks, Nikki 622A for that question. Lucas Hagar. Now I know Lucas had a good question. I attributed it to the wrong person. So he said, on a related note, this had to do with a game management decision. You dive into the logic surrounding first and goal at the 1 with 2:55 left. Feels like 3 kneels and then a rushing attempt at the end zone was best mathematical way to seal it. It's a very good point. It is not something that I normally associate with Harbaugh, but basically here was the situation in the game. The Ravens went on that long touchdown drive. They had, as a big part of that drive, on 3rd and 9 or something, let's go back to it, 3rd and 7, had the 33-yard DPI that was drawn by Beckham in the end zone, set them up at the 1-yard line. Let me get the exact time of game situation here, because I think Lucas Hagar has an excellent point here. So there was only 2:56 to go in the game, and this is important to remember. The Cardinals did not have any timeouts left. They used them up at the beginning of the drive. In fact, on the first 3 plays, they went timeout, 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 finishing with their last timeout at 6:17 to go. So with 2:56, the Ravens couldn't quite have gotten it down to 2 minutes on one play. So they would have, had a 9-point lead. They could have gotten the ball down to they could have gotten it down with 2 kneels to be at 2 minutes. And then they could have run the clock down to about 1:15 on a 3rd play. And then, hey, you're up by 9 points. I think you go ahead and run it again on a 4th play, or you run any play, frankly, at that point, because change of possession would stop the clock. And you run it on a 4th play. And if you give Arizona the ball at the 1-yard line down 9 points, that's not a bad place to be with 1:15 to go. And so I think, Lucas, you have a great point there. And I think from a game management perspective, if they'd been on top of it and said, kneel, even kneel, quarterback sneak would have been fine. And maybe they get in, maybe they don't. Leave them at the 1. Hey, that's great. But they went ahead and they punched the ball in with Gus Edwards, and they got it done there. Lucas, I'm totally with you in terms of the game management on that. Good call. Lucas also asked the question. He said, I don't know if you're explicitly taking a stand in the defensive piece that I wrote, but we can agree that regardless of circumstance, you should always take an action that increases your expected win probability, right? Talked about this in the first show a little bit, but the answer is no. You need to get paid off for the risk you take. So if you have a positive expectation on something, you still need to have reduce that variance as much as possible. And by the way, your second question exactly addresses that, because you're basically saying, wouldn't it have been better to take a chance on having a 9-point lead only, which would have reduced expected points, but certainly increased expected win probability on that drive? And so it's actually you answered your own question with your second question, which is outstanding. But anyway, I know that's a difficult concept for a lot of people to understand, but you basically want to, if whatever you're getting paid off for in life, you want to have that not have a lot of risk that goes with it. So, the classic one is you're faced with the option of investing in a bond or investing in a stock. A stock has a higher expected return. That's the way it's always presented to us. I don't know that that's always been true in every point in history, but over a long term, an equity will have a higher expected rate of return, and the bond a lower one. But supposedly there's less variation and less risk you're taking in terms of the variance of outcome on a bond than on a stock. So that's the reason on a risk-adjusted basis, those things can maintain the pricing that they have, is because people like to reduce risk. So Lucas, great pair of questions. Really appreciate the listeners like you who get into the dirty math like that. And I just appreciate you contributing to the mailbag on a regular basis. Let's see. We got Gooba the Man said, what are your thoughts on Saquon Barkley? What would you give up? Well, we're at a moot point here. I did say my return to him was I'd prefer him to Henry for what he can provide, but I didn't think a third, even for Barkley, renting him for the rest of the season was a reasonable option for the Ravens. The thing I would have tried to trade was a floating fourth in 24. I think the Giants would have refused it because they supposedly refused trades today that might have been better. So the floating fourth in 25 would mean a pick probably almost directly at the end of the round because the Ravens will have compensatory picks. They probably will have at least one compensatory pick that's in the fourth round, and it would be one of the last picks in the fourth round, if not the last pick in the fourth round they'd be trading. So that would be, it'd be of significantly less value than, say, a early to mid fourth round pick. Let's see that. I think that does it for the mailbag. Really appreciate the questions, guys, and always appreciate the thought that goes in that. Please keep them coming. We like the mailbag. We don't always get to it with every guest, particularly if the guest and I are going down a million rabbit holes, but appreciate it on a show like tonight where it gives me something to chew the fat on and go down a rabbit hole with you out there. That'll be it for tonight's show. I will ask folks if you have an interest in a film study short, hit me up with a DM on Twitter. I'll get right back to you. And we'll talk through an idea. Again, the more narrow the idea, the better a chance. And they're still coming in at a rate of 1 or 2 per week during the season. I'm going to get as many of them done as I can. But lots of great ideas. And please stay on top of me. If I ever forget you in terms of getting back to you a second time in particular, don't be ashamed to nudge, guys. I still want to hear, particularly if I responded positively at all the first time or we got together and we talked about it over the phone. It just means I probably have forgotten about it. Nudge me. We'll get right back on top of that. I apologize for the delay getting to it. I will ask again, other folks, if you have a chance, do all the things that will help us algorithmically improve the span of this show. Love it if you just recommend it to that guy at work. In particular, if you just go over to his computer, I know we're all working virtually now, or it seems that way. Go over to that older guy's computer, your dad at his home, whatever it might be, who's still used to using a desktop, doesn't even like the laptop, damn it, it's too much trouble. You can just play the podcast directly off the website. Go to filmstudybaltimore.com, go to podcast, click on that, show him how to do it. Doesn't mean you have to listen to it on anything but your phone. I know that's where 90% of our listens are on a phone, but it would be great to have some other old timers listening to the show. And that would be one request I'd make. Always, reviews are nice, comments are nice, subscriptions to the YouTube channel are good as well. It's the same thing here without pictures, so it's just a different way to listen to it. But we really appreciate the attention, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the loyalty of you folks over all these years. I've now been doing this for 18 years, and you've been a fantastic audience for both the articles for all the years that I've done those, and now the podcast, and I really appreciate it. It's been fun, and you guys are the reason why I keep doing it. That'll be it for tonight, and we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.